Adaptation, innovation, and creativity are the hallmarks of successful entrepreneurship, irrespective of challenges. Tonight on Bizweek, we get to find out how traders in the informal sector are surfing the tide of COVID-19 using e-commerce. Restrictions necessitated by the pandemic have made Zambian entrepreneurs to not only think outside the box, but throw the box altogether. Traditionally, e-commerce was perceived to be an undertaking for businesses in the formal sector, but COVID-19 has changed this trend. Entrepreneurs in the informal sector are now utilizing social media platforms such as Facebook and WhatsApp to stay in business.
We've been managing despite having corona because we do online business. Personally, for me, it's online. So I post my products on Facebook and I also use WhatsApp. I have a group. So since we had COVID and people were not able to travel, those that are outside Lusaka, so they would buy items from me and then I would send them via bus. So that way at least we were able to sell and were able to earn something.
I started advertising online, like on Facebook. Yeah, so most of the people used to call because I started advertising. People started calling, the response was good. Yeah, we started selling within, then outside Lusaka as well. Yeah, we sometimes they call us to go and deliver at their homes. Sometimes they just come to the shop. Yeah.
Can entrepreneurs in the informal sector utilize e-commerce? Can they afford data bundles for e-commerce transactions? Senior partner at Kukula Capital, Jito Kayumba, provides some answers.
So basically, we'd like to find out, how has e-commerce helped you to remain in business during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, essentially, the way we leveraged on e-commerce, utilizing some of the ICT infrastructure that exists. I think first of all, it's on the communications technology like Zoom platforms, ways in which we could essentially have meetings, because that's one of the things that we do quite regularly. That we were now in a position to, shift from a person-to-person meeting where there's COVID risk to now doing things digitally. And I'm sure you've seen this is quite widespread. Then also leveraging on Microsoft Teams. I think those are the two main uses for e-commerce that we've been able to use. That's more from a software perspective. But then also you look at the fact that, we know that supply chains globally were disrupted. So to a large extent, we were able to leverage on Amazon, which then, there are these agencies that allow you to essentially ship into a certain location. They've got hubs in the UK, in the US, and then they ship them into Zambia. So when we needed certain supplies, whether it be for the office or for the portfolio companies that we work with, we're able to utilize that. So that's literally what we were using as part of our, I guess you can say, alternatives to what we previously were using before COVID hit.
Okay, so the Zambian business landscape obviously is largely informal, and what I would like to find out from you is, can e-commerce work for the Zambian informal sector where the majority of our traders operate from?
When we think of e-commerce, we have to think of it in two ways. So one is commerce, right, which is transactions on a day-to-day basis, consumer products, you name it, wholesale and so on and so forth. But then the E element is obviously electronic. It means that you're now transacting on electronic platforms. So you have to think of the entire ecosystem. Now you mentioned something about the local economy being highly informal. Now people make decisions around e-commerce based on access to the platforms that enable e-commerce to happen, access to payment methods that also allow e-commerce to happen. So you're talking about credit cards, perhaps now we've got mobile money, but you have to realize that on the first perspective, mobile money is mostly used now for money transfer and not really for transactions like buying tomatoes in the market or buying all sorts of sort of commodities. So you find that we've come to a point where mobile money, there was a lot of bullishness and a lot of excitement about its existence as a fintech sort of mechanism. But you find that I think people have trust issues with that. They prefer to have cash. And this is why mobile money is primarily for money transfer as opposed to payments. So it's very difficult to have e-commerce grow in an environment where people are not utilizing it for payments. They're only primarily utilizing it for transfers, which doesn't really fit very well into the e-commerce model. Because at the end of the day, people just want to have cash, and then it comes out of the E space. It goes from point A to point B. Then the other element I mentioned is, of course, payments, but then I guess the last point is having the right logistical environment for e-commerce to work. I think in the context of an economy, you need logistics. You need, and by that I mean transportation, the communication that's linked to the transportation, so you can get goods from point A to point B. And when people are transacting online or on any sort of electronic platform, they need to be able to be, perhaps in the comfort of their homes, order something that comes through. Of course, people are utilizing apps like Delivery and so on, but that doesn't really fall in the informal space, because that's maybe more for the affluent who are ordering pizzas and you name it. But if you're talking about the marketplace where it's informal, I think there's a detachment from, and the trust issue with dealing with electronic money and being able to transact electronically. Because I think we're very much sort of structured around touching things. We want to be there to prove that what you're acquiring or what you're from a marketeer or whoever is tangible. It's something that you essentially want, and based on the exchange from cash to a product. So really, to answer your question, e-commerce is not really thriving in this particular market. And I think we have infrastructure deficits that we have to address. I mean, we've got the backbone. I mean, telecom companies, have the infrastructure in place. There's 4G everywhere, both on MTN and Airtel. And of course, Zamtel as well is also building up more infrastructure for connectivity. So from a communication standpoint, I think we're in the right place. The internet is prevalent. Cost of data is going down. But from a logistical standpoint, and then here's the other point actually, that to wrap it up, why it's difficult. So if logistics is lacking, there's also another missing link of addresses. I don't know how to get my product to you if, let's say, there isn't a database of addresses of how I can get that product to you. Because a marketeer or somebody in the informal market is not going to use DHL. They're not going to use some of these expensive sort of couriers. And so what needs to essentially happen is have a localized courier system that has a database of addresses, but it's something that I think Zicta over the years has been looking at putting together. And I think once those pieces fall into place, then it's possible for e-commerce to thrive in the informal market.
What I'd like to also understand is it really affordable? If you look at the cost of data in this particular country, it is something else as well. So is e-commerce really affordable on that front for this entrepreneur that we're looking at the moment who's in the informal sector?
Yeah, with regards to the cost of e-commerce, I think you have to first of all recognize that those in the informal sector are very discerning when it comes to the options that they take on what they buy. And by that, I mean from a price perspective, they're very price sensitive. If something is priced over by 10, 15%, then it's out of the running for their interest. So given the fact that the income levels are rather low and the transactional values are very low, so people really care about every kwacha. Now, if e-commerce is going to add an extra 5, 10 kwacha on top of the transaction, then that's enough of a turn-off to even transact in an e-commerce environment. So, and then the other thing about e-commerce is created to provide a level of efficiency, access, and convenience. So, of course, in the case of Amazon or some of the other, let's say countries where such infrastructure exists, because of the way it's laid out, the infrastructure is there. The tools of e-commerce are accessible, they're cheap, and there's a certain income level, then transactions happen. Where I believe that e-commerce is actually likely to thrive is where perhaps if the Bank of Zambia created some sort of an incentive scheme that would allow for those in the informal market to transact using e-commerce tools, whether it be mobile money, whether it be credit cards, or anything where you're not using cash, where you can transact online or any form of a technological system, and where you can get a discount. And what that essentially would do is that it would elevate the interest level of any consumer to be involved in e-commerce transactions. And I think there's an incentive on the part of the Bank of Zambia to do that because of the fact that there's what they call leakage. When money is not sitting in the financial system, when you and I have money in our pockets, the financial system hasn't recognized that cash because it's in our pockets. If you hide it in your mattress, it's not in the financial system. In the informal market, many people are transacting on a cash basis and never touches a bank account or even into a mobile money account. So the financial system loses the value of the cash in the system and takes away from what we call the multiplier effect of what we call the money multiplier from a monetary sort of management perspective. So the Bank of Zambia wants that money to be in the system so it's counted. And to avoid leakage, I think it's a great idea for them to essentially take it up so more people can transact from an e-commerce standpoint.
Lower uptake of e-commerce in the informal sector can be attributed to mistrust in the financial system. Now let's get to find out why traders in the informal sector do not use e-commerce, if at all they do not use it.
Oh yeah, sometimes I'm a boy about guy. I'm just getting the numbers out in my your money, my bound money. So sometimes I say, "Timankana phone." So it's a kasanga that it was a timu that was at to me account. So sometimes that much no cash is kuma 16, 15. So tinga mpasi ya uban mobile money. But ya cash much no kupatika fika kuma 80, 10 zingat so to balance kuma ka profit cash.
Esa tikonda makashi akafika she muntu atikashinga tatenga but kumankala baja bena ngoti bali fast bafuna kugula ngatagamba ati nza mtumilani mweyate omani timavomera but futi kambiri vimankala na ma confusions because azakuzati nza mtumilani mweyate omani atengana namba but sakutumira mwaiona so kambiri timagulisa mkashi
payments timavomera makashi. Sometimes ngalibe cash, I'm using say Airtel money, or ngalibe Airtel money, I using say MTN money.
Mabanki.
Mabanki skambiri. Manga kochena ka challenge che like video. Wanda ma process ku mabanki mativutaka like monga ise small business. Mafunga che like monga ma business ya kuri ndio mavomera ku mabanki like monga ma checks so.
Shops on multiple chain stores across the country are beginning to close due to high rentals. If entrepreneurs who are running these respective shops can take up e-commerce, the cost of doing business can be reduced. We now get to talk to the Executive Director from the Center for Trade Policy and Development, Isaac Maipopo, who shares his thoughts on this development. So I'd like to find out, we've noticed that uptake of e-commerce in the informal sector is quite very low, and would like to find out from CTPD, an organization that directly does provide some informed research when it comes to trade policy, what should be done to ensure that e-commerce is embraced in the informal sector? What are some of the challenges, and how can that be changed?
COVID-19 has actually presented a lot of opportunities both for the men and women that are involved in business. As we speak now, already there are a number of transactions and business activities that are happening both in the formal and informal space. With regards to movement of resources, you've seen that a number of telecommunication companies such as Airtel as well as MTN have done a tremendous job in terms of trying to improve access to finance for our traders as well as the public in general through their mobile banking facilities. In terms of government investment and tapping into this space to ensure that we benefit from this space, but not only benefiting, but we also get to grow this space. There's more that needs to be done in terms of trying to ensure that we have what I can term as supporting infrastructure. In some of the places in our country, it's very hard for them to have access even to banking facilities due to poor network, as well as just having access to basic gadgets such as phones. When you go to places like Kalomo, you find that there are a number of women that are involved in agricultural business, but most of them actually do not even have mobile phones that they can use to basically communicate, as well as get to benefit from the advancement of technology. So that requisite infrastructure is the key role that government can come in and play by ensuring that you extend network facilities. If it is a setting up of network towers, you get to set up some of these network towers, and if it is to come up with policies that are aimed at ensuring that the gadgets or tools such as telephones, computers, you work around ensuring that these become easily accessible so that a number of people can tap into this space and proceed with their businesses. We are excited from the Center for Trade Policy and Development that a lot of young people have seen a huge opportunity. Every time we go onto our social media platforms, we see that there are a number of pages that are being set up for agriculture-related businesses. We're seeing a lot of young people that are doing door-to-door deliveries, and we think that this is the innovation that will drive the development agenda where we are going when it comes to e-commerce.
Another pertinent question in this discourse that is worth exploring is whether or not opportunities actually exist in the informal sector for e-commerce. As experts have submitted that e-commerce in the informal sector may be challenging, maybe innovators should come up with ICT solutions that can promote e-commerce in the informal sector.